All right, so this is a pretty good domain here. There's a lot of things that I think are common sense that a lot of people have in their home that we can apply to our businesses as well. And so we don't spend a lot of time on this section, but there are some key elements that I want to make sure that you pay attention to whenever we're going through and learning about this, okay? So we get into the three-headed monster again here, not to be confused with Kerberos, but the CIA Triad. Remember, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When we're talking about physical, environmental controls, it's super important to make sure that you still apply that CIA Triad. And it comes back in to full circle here with just some definitions of it. But we've already kind of beaten this down a little bit, so maybe you should just take a look at it if you don't already know it. When we talk about environmental considerations here, there's a lot of things that come into play. And one of the most important things could be the selection of the facility. So whenever we're going through and looking at certain things, we want to make sure that we consider the things that are on the overhead here. And we'll go into each one of these a little bit further, but things like fire suppression, HVAC. We also get into electricity and humidity. You probably don't want a lot of humidity if you have a lot of servers and Bitcoin miners or whatever you're doing. You know, you don't want to mess up those high-end machines. And then temperature. Temperature is obvious as well, right? You don't want to have a server room running at 110 degrees. Studies have shown that you don't need it down at 60 degrees, but we certainly don't want it boiling your blood when you're in there in the server room. So keep that in mind as you're going through and looking at it. When we talk a little bit about HVAC, or the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, there's a lot of interesting things that come into play here. The common cooling, and in this right here, usually you'll see the HVAC above the head with vents pushing out air from above. But in server rooms as well, we talked a little bit about the hot, the cold aisles before. And specifically underneath it here, we have this thing called the plenum floor. So Plenum, for anybody that's concerned about spelling, plenum floor or plenum space. Usually you'll put photoelectric sensors in the plenum floor that are kind of like the garage door openers, how one side has a laser and then the other side has an eye, and if, let's say, smoke comes in between them, then that would alert somebody that there's a problem in the plenum floor underneath there. But usually those are false floors that you run the network cables underneath the ground, and usually they're no more than 8 to 12 inches. But when you go into a data center, you immediately know that it's a false floor because of that. It's raised typically, and it's not only to try to hide the cables for safety, but also it helps with ventilation as well. If you're blowing from top and the bottom, then it can help cool a lot faster. So that's something to take into consideration. We talked a little bit about the hot and cold aisles, and you probably remembered here we cool it from here, and you blow the exhaust up into the little visqueen that I was talking about in the middle, which is that hard plastic, and then you try to just be efficient with recycling that air and putting it through the condenser, getting it to be cold again, and then blowing it back up. So it's just a little bit more efficient. It saves you a little bit of money if you actually set them up this way. And you would immediately notice the difference in your electricity bill if you did not, or if you set this up when you previously did not have hot and cold aisles in your server room. Any questions about that?